You've been taught to control your anger. And you've done it. You smile when you want to scream. You nod when you want to walk away. You keep your voice level when something inside you is burning. That's not control. That's burial. And what you've buried isn't gone. It's growing. There's a difference between managing anger and suppressing it. One builds you, the other breaks you quietly, slowly, from the inside out. And most people never learn the difference until they've already hollowed themselves out. You think you're being strong, mature, evolved. But strength doesn't mean silence. Maturity doesn't mean swallowing everything until you can't taste your own voice anymore. Real control isn't about making your anger disappear. It's about knowing exactly what to do with it. Let's get something clear first. Anger isn't the enemy. You've been told it is. You've been raised in a world that treats anger like a virus. Something dirty. Something that proves you're out of control, unstable, less than. But anger is information. It tells you when a boundary has been crossed, when something matters, when you've been diminished or dismissed or disrespected. It's one of the oldest signals your body has. It kept your ancestors alive. It keeps you awake to the things that violate your sense of self. The problem isn't the anger. The problem is what you've been taught to do with it. You were probably told to count to 10, to breathe, to let it go, to be the bigger person, to rise above. All of that sounds reasonable. But here's what no one told you. When you suppress anger, you don't get rid of it. You relocate it. You take something that was sharp and immediate and shove it down into the basement of your body. And it doesn't just sit there quietly. It rots. Suppressed anger becomes anxiety. It becomes depression. It becomes chronic tension in your shoulders, your jaw, your stomach. It becomes passive aggression. It becomes resentment that colors every interaction you have, even with people who didn't do anything wrong. It becomes a version of you that you don't recognize. You've met people like this. They're calm on the surface, pleasant even. But there's something off, something cold. They agree with everything but contribute nothing. They say they're fine, but their body is screaming. They never argue, but they punish you in small, quiet ways. Withdrawn affection, delayed responses, subtle digs wrapped in jokes. They've been suppressing for so long they don't even know they're angry anymore. They just know they're tired. That's what suppression does. It doesn't resolve anything. It just spreads the damage over time until you can't trace it back to the source. And here's the cruelest part. You think you're doing the right thing. You think you're being the mature one by staying quiet, by not making a scene, by protecting the peace. But whose peace are you protecting? Not yours. You're protecting the comfort of the person who crossed the line. You're protecting the system that taught you your emotions are inconvenient. You're protecting everyone except yourself. That's not emotional intelligence. That's self-abandonment. Management is different. Management doesn't mean pretending the anger isn't there. It means acknowledging it fully, understanding it, and then choosing what to do with it. It means you feel the heat without letting it make your decisions. You recognize the anger. You name it. You ask what it's trying to tell you. And then you act with precision, not impulse. Because anger managed is anger directed. It becomes clarity. It becomes boundary enforcement. It becomes the force that moves you out of situations that don't serve you. It becomes the energy that drives you to build something better instead of just enduring something broken. Suppression takes your power and buries it. Management takes your power and aims it. Think about it this way. Imagine someone disrespects you at work, undermines you in front of others, takes credit for your idea, speaks to you like you're disposable. If you suppress, you say nothing. You smile. You let it slide because you don't want to seem difficult. You tell yourself it's not worth it. You go home and the anger sits in your chest like a stone. It replays in your mind. You imagine what you should have said. You lose sleep. You start dreading that person. You start dreading the job. The anger spreads. If you manage, you feel the anger immediately. You recognize it. You don't react in the moment because reaction is rarely strategic. But you also don't bury it. You choose your timing. You address it directly, calmly, with precision. You set a boundary. You make it clear that behavior won't be repeated. You don't explode. You don't collapse. You act. One version of you becomes smaller. The other version becomes sharper. That's the difference. And here's what most people don't understand. Suppression doesn't just hurt you emotionally. It damages you physically. Your body doesn't know the difference between a threat you're facing and a threat you're swallowing. When you suppress anger, your nervous system stays activated. Your cortisol stays elevated. Your blood pressure climbs. Your immune system weakens. Your digestion suffers. You're carrying the physiological cost of rage without ever expressing it. It's like revving an engine while keeping the car in park. Eventually, something breaks. Chronic suppression has been linked to cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disorders, chronic pain, depression, and a shortened lifespan. Your body is trying to process an emotion you refuse to let out, so it stores it in your tissues, your muscles, your cells. You become a graveyard for feelings you were afraid to have. And the worst part? You think you're healthy because you're not yelling. You think you're in control because you're not throwing things or slamming doors. But control isn't about stillness. It's about direction. A river that's dammed doesn't stop being a river. It just becomes dangerous. So what does real management look like? It starts with honesty. You have to be willing to admit when you're angry. Not to anyone else. To yourself. Most people can't even do that. They'll say they're frustrated, annoyed, disappointed. But they won't say angry. Because anger feels too big, too ugly, too out of control. But the refusal to name it doesn't make it smaller. It just makes it invisible. And invisible anger is the most destructive kind. So step 1 is simple. Say it. I'm angry. Not, I'm a little upset. Not, I'm just tired. Not, it's fine. I'm angry. Say it out loud if you have to. Write it down. Let yourself feel the weight of the word without immediately trying to fix it or justify it or minimize it. Just let it be true. Once you've named it, ask why. Not in a self-critical way. Not, why am I being so sensitive? Or, why can't I just let this go? Ask it like an investigator. What happened that triggered this? What boundary was crossed? What value of mine was violated? Anger always has a reason. It's never random. Even if the trigger seems small, the anger is pointing at something real. Maybe it's not about the dishes. Maybe it's about being taken for granted. Maybe it's not about the comment. Maybe it's about being unseen. Your anger is trying to protect something. Figure out what. Then, and this is critical, separate the feeling from the action. Feeling angry doesn't mean you have to act angry. You can feel fury and still speak calmly. You can feel rage and still make clear decisions. The emotion is valid. The expression is a choice. This is where most people fail. They either suppress everything or they let everything out in a flood. But management is the middle path. You honor the feeling. You listen to it. You let it inform you. And then you choose how to respond. Sometimes that means confrontation. Sometimes it means walking away. Sometimes it means setting a boundary. Sometimes it means ending a relationship. But it's always a choice. Not a reaction, not a suppression, a choice. And here's what happens when you start managing instead of suppressing. You stop being afraid of your own anger. You stop seeing it as something dangerous or shameful. You start seeing it as a signal, a tool, a part of your emotional vocabulary that's just as valid as joy or sadness or fear. You stop people-pleasing out of terror that your anger will leak out. You stop over-apologizing. You stop shrinking. You stop letting people cross lines just because you're afraid of what you'll become if you defend them. You become solid. Not hard. Not cold. Solid. People feel the difference. They stop testing you because they know where you stand. They stop pushing because they know you'll push back. Not violently, but firmly. You stop attracting people who need you to be small, and you start attracting people who respect your edges. This is what self-control actually means. Not the absence of anger. The presence of choice. Now let's talk about what happens when you don't learn this. When you spend years suppressing, you become two people. There's the version of you the world sees. Calm, agreeable, easy to be around. And then there's the version of you that exists underneath. The one that's exhausted, bitter, numb. The surface version keeps performing. The underneath version is barely breathing. And the gap between those two versions gets wider every year. You start to feel like a fraud. Like you're acting your way through your own life. You lose connection to what you actually want because you've spent so long managing what other people need from you. You become a shell. And the tragedy is, people will praise you for it. They'll call you mature, level-headed, the calm one. They'll never know you're dying inside. Because suppression is invisible. It doesn't look like a problem. It looks like virtue. That's what makes it so insidious. But your body knows. Your body is keeping a perfect record of every moment you swallowed your truth. Every time you smiled when you wanted to scream. Every time you said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. And eventually, the bill comes due. It might be a panic attack, a breakdown, a health crisis, a sudden inexplicable rage that seems to come out of nowhere but has actually been building for years. Suppression doesn't protect you from your anger. It just delays the reckoning. So how do you start managing if you've been suppressing your whole life? You start small. You don't have to confront everyone who's ever wronged you. You don't have to explode just to prove you can feel. You start by noticing. Notice when you're angry and pretending you're not. Notice when you change your answer to keep the peace. Notice when you laugh off something that actually hurt. Just notice. Don't judge it. Don't fix it yet. Just see it. Then, in low-stakes situations, practice honesty. Someone asks what you want for dinner and you actually have a preference? Say it. Someone makes a joke at your expense and it bothers you? Name it. Someone interrupts you? Finish your sentence. These aren't big confrontations. They're tiny reclamations of your voice. But they matter. Because every time you honor a small anger, you teach yourself that your feelings are allowed to take up space. You teach yourself that you don't have to betray yourself to be loved. And slowly, you'll start to feel the difference between suppression and management in your body. Suppression feels like holding your breath. Management feels like exhaling. One makes you tighter. The other makes you real. Now, there's a question some people ask. What if I hurt someone if I express my anger? And that's a fair concern. But here's the thing. Managed anger doesn't hurt people. Suppressed anger does. Because suppressed anger leaks. It comes out sideways. It poisons relationships slowly. Managed anger is direct. It's honest. It's clean. It says, that hurt me. Not, you're a terrible person. It says, I need this to change. Not, you always do this. It says, I'm angry, and I'm telling you why. Not silent punishment for weeks. People can work with honesty. They can't work with suppression, because suppression creates confusion. It creates resentment. It creates distance. And eventually, it creates endings that didn't have to happen. So many relationships die not because of anger, but because someone refused to express it until it became contempt. Contempt is what happens when anger has been ignored too long. It's the final stage of suppression. And it's almost always fatal. If you want to save your relationships, stop protecting people from your anger. Let them see it. Let them respond to it. Let them know what you need. That's intimacy, not the performance of constant calm. Here's the last thing. Managing your anger doesn't mean you'll always win. It doesn't mean people will always listen. It doesn't mean you'll always get what you want. But it means you'll always know you tried. You'll always know you didn't abandon yourself. And that's worth more than any external outcome. Because at the end of the day, the relationship that matters most is the one you have with yourself. And if you can't be honest with yourself about what you feel, you can't be honest with yourself about anything. You'll spend your life in a fog, wondering why nothing feels real, wondering why you're so tired, wondering why you can't connect. The answer is simple. You've been suppressing the very thing that makes you alive. Your anger isn't the problem. Your fear of it is. So stop burying it. Stop pretending it's not there. Stop apologizing for feeling something that's completely human. Feel it. Name it. Understand it. Direct it. Let it make you sharper, not smaller. Let it build boundaries, not walls. Let it be the force that protects you, not the weight that crushes you. Anger managed is power reclaimed. Anger suppressed is slow death. You get to choose.